You know how this show goes, though. We're going to go all the way down through the power rankings. We're no longer stuck by the order, but we will go in reverse order through some of the teams that both interest us and interest Phil Levanco the most, because that's how we control our things. Tom, I can hear you.
Okay, I was about to say that's really funny that you made a joke, multiple jokes, and it just got hit with radio silence. I was wondering what was going on there, because I started to answer, and then you went ha ha ha, and then kept talking.
Listen, if there's one thing Sam Stejko has taught me, you laugh at your own jokes and you do them until people think they're funny, and you don't really worry about reactions.
So yeah, I'm very glad to be on your New Jersey list of New Jersey All-Stars today. Just kind of going back and forth. It should have snuck somebody else on the ETR from New Jersey, but maybe next time.
Listen, I think Jersey, it starts with Queen Latifah, and then from there you roll through. Who else is? Listen, every time I land at Newark Airport, they've got all the pictures now of all the famous people. A lot of news hosts. I don't think other people think those people are celebrities, except for people from New Jersey. Which, that's my one Long Island hit at New Jersey that I'm going to make on this one. And a shout out to my guy at MLS Aces. He knows exactly what I'm talking about. A great weekend of MLS action, a bunch of national TV games, some huge results. Oh, Phil jumping in here, Redmond and Ice-T as well. Wyclef, obviously. I had Wyclef before he said it. And all the Fujis, Akon can go in there as well. So shout out to Newark. It's now become a Newark podcast Newark on this one, which is fitting because there is an Open Cup game coming up tomorrow night that will be very New York, New Jersey based in general. And the top of the Eastern Conference, the top two, New York, NYCFC, New York Red Bulls. They're going to be a part of what we talk about coming up on this show. But we're going to start from the bottom. So we're going to start with some teams that have either struggled or were struggling and have gone on some really good runs of form, especially when you look at the Vancouver Whitecaps, who I'm excited to talk about with you. We will have some guests coming up. We've got Brennan from Cincinnati to talk a little bit of FC Cincinnati with us, as they are one of the teams that have been in a good run of form and question if they can continue it. And we'll talk to Felipe Cárdenas because we try to put together a show and Atlanta just keeps signing players. So we figured we'd have Felipe on to help us out a little bit to talk about what these signings can mean, what's going on with the team. And I guess we'll just do a pure measuring gauge 1 through 10 of how happy Joseph Martinez is right now, because I think that affects all of our happinesses. Tom, are you ready to be Matt Doyle for the next hour?
I can't publicly acknowledge that, or I don't think I'll ever hear the end of it from him. But if I say yes, I'm ready to be Matt Doyle. I'm not ready to be Matt Doyle. I'm ready to step in here and replace him and make people think like, hey, maybe it's time to trade him. So that's interesting. That's the point.
So you're going to Miguel Berry this, but the reality is there is a Cucho Hernandez around the corner. That's what
they'll be here for a month before they regret it.
That's what that Apple money is for. So that gets us into our
look at the transition, David Gass.
Of the power rankings, feeling good, feeling loose already. Columbus, currently number 23 in the power rankings. That is a 4-spot drop from number 19, a 1-1 draw against Charlotte in week 15. But you know what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about Cucho Hernandez. He is the 7th most expensive signing in MLS history. He is the most expensive signing in Columbus. Tom, you've been working on this one for a little while. A 23-year-old Colombian international coming from Watford. I think scored 5 goals in the Premier League. As you heard about this deal and watched it go along, sort of what's been your reaction internalizing what this signing is for Columbus?
Yeah, I mean, just right off the bat, look, it's a huge deal. This is a 23-year-old current Colombian international. He only has a handful of caps or whatever, but that is a legitimately really good and really deep team and nation. This is a player. He scored 5 goals or whatever in the Premier League this year, and that was for Watford, a very bad team. Like Josh Sargent at Norwich had his own difficulties in terms of getting chances with Norwich as a team that finished at the bottom. Watford were right down there too. So the fact that Cucho Hernandez is scoring 5 goals in the Premier League for a team that's not creating a lot of chances because they were losing a lot is impressive. He has his own experience in La Liga. That's impressive. So when this was all going down, like I kind of heard maybe a month ago some rumors about Cucho's name. I didn't know how serious it was or how real it was and how likely a deal was going to possibly be. So I didn't think much of it. When the Mauro Manotas reports were kind of breaking that he was among their targets, Tim Bezbatchenko was in England working on this deal for Hernandez. So the deal from the interest and talks from Minotas were really real. They could have they really could have kind of sealed that deal if they wanted. He was somebody who they identified as a strong target and somebody that, you know, he wanted to come back to MLS or be open to that possibility from Xolos. Another name I heard that they were after a little bit was Kyle Larin, the former Orlando City, out of contact with Besiktas. But Cucho Hernandez was the guy from the beginning, and that was their number one target, and that was what the push was. So Bezbatchenko got to England, he wrapped it up, and now they, again, you said it's the 7th most expensive signing in league history. Is a 23-year-old. He's technically a young DP for right now. He's just entering his prime, and he's somebody with experience at 2 of the best leagues in the world, and he's come to MLS. Look, there was a bunch of reasons for optimism in terms of him as a player. We'll see the fit. We'll see if there's enough chance creation around him. But look, when you go out and get, you know, $10.5 million for a 23-year-old Colombian international, you know, I'm always going to be praising that.
What stands out to me and what I've talked about a couple of times already today with some people is just, to me, Zelarayan felt like a Drogba Rooney style. This is our big signing, not this is what our club does now. And so I'm a little, that's where the surprise and excitement for me comes in, is I didn't realize this was something that Columbus was going to do consistently. I didn't realize they were in this stratosphere of MLS with the Atlantas, with the LAFCs. You could argue Seattle at times as well, where this is their reality, that they can even go out and attract a guy like this.
Yeah, I think that's fair too. Like this is kind of a different stratosphere. And you know, one more point on him and how he's thought of around the league. I had 2 executives from 2 teams that I respect a lot in terms of their recruitment reach out to me unsolicited to say Cucho's a legitimately really good player. Like Columbus really got a good signing. So again, these are people who I didn't ask around about it. They were kind of coming to me to be like, wow, that was a good signing. Like, so I think that should speak volumes about him. And your point, like when they won MLS Cup, 2 of their 3 DPs were Darlington Nagbe and Jazzy Zardes. Like you said, like, and they were really, really good players. And like, that was good enough to win MLS Cup. And Lucas Zelarayan was supposed to be the headliner. And now it's kind of like a 1A, 1B thing between these 2 players. It is super exciting. It's super impressive that this team is taking these swings and not only just having the ambition, but having, you know, the money and the recruitment strategy and the pitch to kind of pull it off.
Now, 23 in the power rankings, dropping 4 spots from 19. They are not a playoff team. And when I watched them this weekend against Charlotte, they looked toothless in the final third. It was the 5-3-2 because of the injuries that they have, lack of a left back. So they gave Derek Etienne the wing back at right wing back. On the flip side, Barry and Hurtado up top together. But you could see that their build through central midfield is good. Their ability to play out of pressure is good. Once they're in the final third, if they hesitate for a moment and a team packs in, there is no one to pick things apart with Zelarayan off the field, and it becomes Derek Etienne trying to go one-on-one and hit a shot against a defender. So it does feel like Cucho can be a direct replacement for what they're missing.
Yeah. So again, I've been very positive for good reason in terms of this signing for his profile, his ability, and everything I've heard. So the one, I think, negative side that is not really Cucho related directly, that those problems you bring up are real. So my fear is he going to get enough chance creation? Lucas Zelarayan is one of my favorite players in the league. He's never been a chance creating type of number 10. He's not been like Carlos Gil. He's a great goal scoring threat, an incredibly valuable player, a really, really good player. But the wingers as well, like Derek Etienne Jr. is more of a goal dangerous winger. Yaya Boa hasn't been as good as they hoped. Kevin Molino has been hurt for pretty much the entire time that they signed him. My only worry with this move is, will there be enough chance creation to make a $10.5 million investment in a center forward, you know, truly shine and put him in the best spot to succeed?
I just realized that I was looking for a Colombian to bring on MLS today and talk about this player. And I forgot that Felipe Cárdenas, who will be on later on to talk Atlanta United, is Colombian. So we'll talk more about Cucho when he gets there. I understand your concern. I also think of a Gustavo Bo, who positionally makes no sense on his team, but talent is talent. And when you get good soccer players on the field, life becomes easier for everyone else. And we'll have Felipe come on to talk about with us in just a moment. Let's continue to move down, though, in positive order in the power rankings, but maybe not for positive reasons. Inter Miami, number 20, previously number 17. So they moved down 3 spots after the 2-0 loss to Atlanta United. Jean Mota, double yellow cards early in the first half. I think it was the 25th minute. And of course, Luis Araujo, the opening goal in the 2nd minute off the assist by Joseph Martinez. Inter Miami, a lot of talk around them as the transfer window opens. Tom, let me just ask you this straight out. How much of it is just agents and newspapers in other countries just saying Inter Miami? And how much of it is Inter Miami actually doing work and looking at players?
So usually it's the former. That Inter Miami replaced the LA Galaxy of the, all right, we need to throw out an MLS team. Inter Miami. And then that's kind of how it runs. Like, they were linked with Andre Yarmolenko. And I was like, that's not true. Like, Yarmolenko has been somebody that's like a name that could be had by MLS clubs. He has been offered and discussed. But again, with Mario Götze is where I imagine you were going. They had a scout in the Netherlands watching him and other players for 3 months. Like, they had legitimate talks with Mario Götze. What it was conveyed to me was that he wasn't their top target, which made me excited to hopefully find out at some point who their top target is if somebody like Mario Götze wasn't their top target. So, the latest reports, I might have even been announced today that he signed with Eintracht Frankfurt, so obviously this is off the table and everything. But again, they did have real talks with Mario Götze and Mario Götze's camp. But again, from what it was described to me, he wasn't their top target. They'll be able to sign a DP. I was kind of told even back in the winter that the plan for additions would probably be a DP in the summer, and likelihood was going to be somebody in like the attacking midfield kind of role, maybe a winger, maybe a playmaking winger. But again, that all tracks given their, what they really need from this team and kind of what fits with the core that's going to be moving forward. So yeah, again, Mario Götze was real. He wasn't the top target, but those weren't complete nonsense.
They weren't complete nonsense is a great way to end that sentence. It's sort of the conversation we're probably always going to be having around Inter Miami. Unfortunately, I did think there was some positivity in this performance. No Gregory, they go down a man. I thought Ariel Lassiter was really good in this one. I thought you saw the moments of quality from Campagna. Obviously, the big mistake from Bryce Duke, who's a young player. It does feel like they found enough pieces to be ready to bring in the DPs. I say that in that it feels like Mbake at center back, Lassiter on the wing, what they're getting out of McVie, what they're getting out of Drake Callender. It feels like they're in a place where you can sort of look at the whole roster and say, these are the DPs that make sense and this is how they fit in, rather than just blindly signing talent.
Yeah, and that's fair too. And look, like all of this, a lot of the analysis points come from a spot of relativity and expectations. Like Miami were in a really awful spot at the start of this offseason, and they really kickstarted their rebuild. They got a ton of players out and a ton of, difficult contracts to get off of, and they were able to do that. So they kind of fast forward the rebuild. And as you point out, they have a number of guys that seem like they're in the core moving forward, like, Damian Lowe and Gregory and John Mata, DeAndre Yedlin, Bryce Duke, Leo Campagna, a couple of the wingers. Like, this is a team that with this open DP spot, and I know John Champion on ESPN on the broadcast said that their idea was kind of, a handful of max TAM level types of guys. So if you add a couple of these guys, if you add a attacking DP, and then Gonzalo Higuain has a club option for next season, so you have to assume that that's not going to get picked up. And then you have another DP spot, and all of a sudden things can change in MLS so quickly with, one or two really high level signings, and this could be a legitimate playoff team. And again, like this is all coming from a spot of, this looked like a 2, 3, maybe 4 year thing to get out of all the mistakes that happened and all of the bad culture and everything. Like, I think Phil Neville's done a really good job this year, obviously, what the front office has done. So again, I think that they're ahead of schedule, and I will put the caveat that the expectations are pretty low, but I don't know. I think that things are pretty positive in terms of Miami right now.
I think that's a good way to put it, of being ahead of schedule for them. Their schedule is different than what it is for an Atlanta, a Philadelphia, a New England, who you expect them to compete for trophies this year. That was not the conversation around Inter Miami, and they are not there. They are currently sitting pretty low down at number 20 in our power rankings, dropping 3 spots after that loss. Let's keep moving on, and now we are into the positive ones, the ones that are moving up as they drop Inter Miami and Columbus deeper down. Let's go to Vancouver, number 18. That is 6 places higher than the previous power rankings when they were at number 24. They went on the road and beat FC Dallas 2-0. The caveat here is clearly they have FC Dallas's number, their second win over Dallas in about a month and a half. But this was a huge moment for them. Tom Cavallini gets the early goal. Andre Kubas gets his first start for them in Major League Soccer. And now they head into a Canadian Championship semifinal. All a big win. They're approaching the playoffs, and they are the hottest team in the last 8 games in MLS.
Yeah, this is really good for Vancouver. The start of the season is really bad, and I would love to point out, too, that their best player, Ryan Gauld, was not starting in this game, which makes the win all that more impressive. I was talking to somebody in Vancouver who pointed out to me that, hey, do you know the last time that we won by multiple goals on the road? It was July of 2017. So it's a really positive weekend for Vancouver. They look good. Cavallini scoring goals. The highlights running right now, if you're watching on YouTube, it's a pretty hilarious goal in terms of some deflections, some defensive mistakes. It kisses off the post as a defender is running back to clear it. Whatever, a goal's a goal, and he's scoring goals. So things are moving up. Andres Cubas is legitimate, it seems. And I know it's his MLS debut. There's, a lot more time to come and a lot more performances to come, but he looks like exactly what they needed.
They have had quality on the ball at times in midfield, but there's no structure to it, and I don't think those players have been able to shine. It feels like Cubas is both positionally sound to help a Baldissimo, a Russell Tybert, whoever it is that's alongside him, maybe even Gold from a deeper position at times, and his ability to then spray the ball, create in the attack, get a Caicedo, get a Dahomey out into transition earlier. All of that is going to be massive, and just, I think, having the centerpiece to build the rest around it. It feels like Vanni Sartini had been trying to use tape and Band-Aids to sort of get through it. Youngworth has played in there way more than he ever should in Major League Soccer. So it has not been super positive in that area, and that's where Cubas, as you said, seems to be as advertised, the DP that they needed.
Yeah, so I'm glad that you brought it up. That's been my issue with them. Like, what I liked so much under Vanni Sartini when he took over last year, he simplified things, he structured things, and he put his best players in their best positions to succeed. And then all of a sudden in preseason, he starts over tinkering with things. Like their first game, they inverted the triangle. Last year, they were a 3-4-2-1 with Ryan Gauld of a bit of a free roll, kind of like what Nashville are doing. And then all of a sudden, they come out for their first game. They drop, I forget if Michael Baldissimo is a starter or whoever it was. They were starting with a number 6 and 2 8s in a 5-3-2, and that takes Ryan Gauld further away from his number 10 and further away from goal. I just don't have any idea what these little things are. Christian Gutierrez is playing sometimes as a left center back. I know they've had injuries to deal with. Javane Brown is playing as a right center back or whatever occasionally, and Ryan Raposo, one of the few kind of position changes that has worked, as him at wing back, but I was really disappointed by that. The simplicity and just kind of the Brian Schmetzer is a king at this. Put your best players in their best positions to succeed, and you don't always have to overcomplicate things. And he was go ahead.
No, I agree with you, but I would say this, because you're right. Some of these didn't make sense. A lot of them, it felt like were forced by injury. I mean, I think they took Baldissimo off at halftime of that Crew game in the opening game. But when you look at Seattle and he chooses to play a center mid at center mid, it's because he has Madronda to play at left back instead, or Nuhu to move to center back, who's a Cameroonian full international, right? With this team you're talking about, there have been times, especially across the back line and in central midfield, where there are players who probably shouldn't be playing in MLS or shouldn't be starting at their position or whatever, that they had to put into some of these roles. And so I do think the depth, which wasn't tested in the playoff run last year because they were so healthy and somewhat lucky in that way, that showed that Vancouver wasn't really, as a roster, ready to compete at the level that maybe some of us expected them to coming into the season, if that's fair to say.
Yeah, that's totally fair. And look, Ryan Gauld has missed a number of games, and he hasn't been 100% fit and in form for the other ones. He's just kind of always been in and out. Brian White missed about the first month, and he was kind of slowly coming around. So I'll give you that, but I don't know. I just think some of these decisions are we overthink it, or it's pretty basic, that it's just, overcomplicating things for no reason and creating problems that either weren't there or exacerbating problems that were there. But, like you said, let's see, reserve more judgment. We'll see when if the best 11 is available and they're still playing with a 6 and 2 8s in a 5-3-2 or tinkering around. Like, I'm going to be pretty annoyed and disappointed, but we'll see.
5-1-1 in their last 7 games, a 3-game win streak, and they play in a Canadian Championship semifinal at home to York United tomorrow night. So things are looking up for the number 18 team in our power rankings. They moved up 6 places, from last week. Let's go with the obvious things, though. Let's put our best players in their best position. We're going to talk Cincinnati now. That means Pat Brennan from the Cincinnati Enquirer and Cincinnati.com. Number 16, previously number 12. So Cincinnati moves back 4 spots, even though they get a draw at Philadelphia. Pat, you don't even have to touch on how ridiculous that is. I'm just going to leave that by itself. Let's talk a little Brandon Vazquez to open things up. He gets another goal, this time without Lucho Acosta on the field. Can this man carry FC Cincinnati to a playoff spot?
That's a great question. First of all, thanks for having me on, guys. I think there's a couple big questions that are fairly straightforward about FC Cincinnati, and basically it's like some form of, is what's happening right now sustainable? And you just hit on one with Brandon Vazquez. I tend to think that, look, there are so many points along the way so far this season where Brandon could have slowed down his scoring pace or let off the gas a little bit or just, stopped. He could stop right now and you'd still have to say 2022 has been a great season for Brandon Vazquez. He just keeps coming. I had a really nice conversation with him after the game in Philly. So that was his 8th goal of the year, tying him with Brennan for the club record for goals in a single season. And it was I know. But Brandon actually expressed that he was aware of the fact that his next goal would tie him for that modest single season record, and then 2 that he has every intention of claiming that spot outright, which he's obviously is and would have been in a great position to do. But I he'll get there obviously at this stage. It'd be crazy if he didn't, and I expect Brandon to keep coming. Absolutely.
Yeah, so I think again, and thanks, Mr. Patches, for joining the program here. I think it's legit. Like we've been saying it all season. I don't think that there are too many doubters in terms of whether or not he's a legitimate starting center forward in this league and somebody who can score goals. Like his movement, what he does, like the chances being created are helping him shine. That's why we'll talk about Brenner a little bit in a couple minutes, but that's why I've kind of been holding out hope that Brenner will look like a different player when he gets to play next to Vazquez and in front of Lucho kind of consistently. But it shows like what this foundation is, what Pat Noonan and the coaches staff are doing. In terms of records, Brandon Vazquez has to have, the club record for getting kicked in the face while scoring now, right? Just with the one.
Yeah, that's for sure. But just one quick thing on Vazquez. He scores in so many different ways. This is not a one-trick pony. He can do it with power from distance. He can do it with finesse. And he can just be brave like we saw on Saturday night. So that too kind of, I feel like, lends itself to the idea that this is not, what we're seeing from Brandon is not a fluke, and it's probably not going to go away.
What are your thoughts on this attack? Sorry, Dave. I was gonna transition to the to the Brenner stuff. What do you kind of think of this attack? What do you think about Brenner and everything that you're also hearing about kind of this situation?
Yeah, I mean, when you look right now, the attack is giving you what you want. You're not necessarily getting certain things from maybe where you expect or would want in terms of like sustainable roster construction. But if you were to say, like, hey, if FC Cincinnati, reaches mid to late June and they've got as many goals as they have from the forward position, regardless of who's doing the scoring, before the season, you would have been like, yeah, absolutely, we'll take the output they've had right now. Now, Brandon Vazquez, who's on a really, really team-friendly deal, is the one doing the scoring. And Brenner is giving you, I think it's up for debate. People that watch this team closely kind of debate whether or not Brenner is giving you a little bit of something or nothing. I tend to think that for someone that, just with the dollar amount attached to his name that Brenner has, you have to, there's got to be end product there, and there's next to none. So that's but then the flip side of that is if you can get anything out of Brenner in the second half of the season, in addition to what you're already getting from Lucho, who's playing at an MVP level, Brandon Vazquez, Alvaro Barrial started to contribute a little bit, then it's like, wow, maybe this team goes from trying to fight and scratch and claw to get in the 7th or maybe 6th or 7th playoff spot to something a little bit more ambitious beyond that. So
Yeah.
I think it's I'm sorry. Go on, Tom.
You're good. No, I was just gonna add my own.
This is not my show, by the way.
No, you're the guest. So we're laying out for you, and I feel bad for Dave. I stepped on him before, and now he's just sitting quietly, resting his voice from working on every single show imaginable today. But yeah, I was gonna add my own kind of reporting on Brenner. Like what they're gonna get from him this summer is an open DP spot. That's my assumption. That's where I think this thing is trending. Like it's been I've reported, you've reported everything about Internacional made a bid that since he didn't see the value that lined up with their value, plus they wanted to really give it a shot, what he looked like in this team next to Vazquez and in front of Lucho. The relationship had been pretty bad. It's been repaired a little bit, but for what it's worth, like there are teams in Brazil that we know of. There are a number of teams in Europe that are really that are seriously looking at him. I think that I'd be surprised if Cincy holds too high of a price. I think that there's going to be a middle ground here met by somebody in Europe in terms of a transfer, and it's going to be really valuable for Cincy to get an open DP spot. And I kind of made a face when you were talking about Barrial a little bit. I think that that's where things might trend for him as well. The best thing he can give them is opening up the U22 initiative slot.
It's fair enough.
Pat, we appreciate you coming on. I know that you have a personal commitment to Brenner staying on the team because your last name is Brennan, and I think that's just positive for your brand overall. So we appreciate you being clear-minded about it.
The number of typos and misspellings for him that redirect towards me, it's massive for my brand.
Yeah. Listen.
We'll see how it goes.
There'll be a lot less. I can't believe you missed that chance. But there might be a lot more positivity in the mentions as well. You should follow Pat Brennan if you're not. FC Cincinnati beat reporter for the Enquirer Sports as well as at Cincinnati.com. Pat, thank you so much for taking the time to join us.
Guys, thank you so much.
So number 16 on the power rankings, down 4 spots after what was a really good performance and result in Philadelphia. As I said at the beginning of our time with Pat, that makes no sense. But I'm not the one who decides the power rankings. I'm just the one. Have I been muted this whole time? I'm not the one who decides the power rankings. I'm just the one who hosts it when I'm not muted. That's all I do. Now let's move on to our next team and another guest that we have here, one that we always love to have on. Let's move to number 14, up 6 spots from number 20, Atlanta United. Excuse me. And that means that we have to have on Felipe Cárdenas. Felipe, let's start with the game this weekend. On a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the happiest, how happy is Joseph Martinez right now, and how happy does that make everyone else?
Well, like Pat said, thank you for having me. Always a pleasure to be on the show. I'll give it a 10. I mean, that's what I said after the game. I did a live room as well, and I'm like, there's nothing else you can ask from Joseph Martinez at this stage of his, you can call it a sucking comeback. A goal, assist, a 96-minute performance, a win. And that's all he wanted. You can see it in him. I think he obviously through the injuries, he just wasn't having fun anymore. And that is, I think, a wild thing to say about Joseph Martinez, the Joseph Martinez that we've seen come into this league and just light it up with his personality, his swagger, his attitude, and of course the goals. And just being close to the team and seeing him around training when he isn't playing and he's trying to recover, it's just, it's not the same guy. But you saw it against Inter Miami. Those goals, the way he celebrated, he just wants to play. He just wants to win. And I think he understands that this is a team that's rebuilding, that's struggling with injuries. But he's back. And so, yeah, it was a huge, huge boost for Atlanta United to see him in that game, getting the goal, getting the assist, and finishing the game.
Before we get into the signings that were just made, you look at this game. You look at the way they set up Emerson Hyman back in the team, Almada still injured, but does it feel like all the pieces can fit together?
Yes and no. I mean, I don't think the game against Inter Miami was like this revelation, like, oh my gosh, like this is it, like this team is good to go. No, I think there's still players that are playing out of position, like Ronaldo Cisneros, who, Gonzalo Pineda insists that Ronaldo Cisneros can play in a wide position. I don't see it. I think he's a target center forward, does a lot better in that position. For me, wide players need to be among the most technical players on the team, and that's not Ronaldo Cisneros. And so that's one that just to me raises questions. I think he's sort of just filling a role right now because Thiago Almada is suspended. And then there are other players that we see week in and week out, like Marcelino Moreno, that you're sort of not sure what he's going to give you, where his exact best position is. And you mentioned Emerson Hyndman, who I thought played really well, and I think Atlanta United needs that sort of player that could just be on the ball, get rid of it, move it forward, progress, be clean. But there are a lot of players still on this roster that I think have very, very similar profiles, and that's why when I talk to people, my sources, and I talk to scouts, they refer to that to the roster build as someone told me it was narrow meaning just too many players of the same ilk, right? So they made it work against Inter Miami, but it was a 10-man Inter Miami, and it wasn't a great performance. Yes, they got the win, but 85th minute, it was still sort of wide open. And I think there are a lot of fans in Atlanta are happy to see the team win, but they're still frustrated sort of like that lack of clinical performances week in and week out.
Yeah, and that's totally fair too. That we'll only see if that comes with time. And again, when Thiago Almada's back, we'll see what everything looks like with the looking fresh Joseph Martinez, which was a really nice sign, I think, for Atlanta fans and neutrals in this league. I think the league is more fun when he's on. But more to the point now, with the transfer window opening in a couple weeks, Atlanta, who I thought were going to be in a really difficult spot in terms of making additions or making senior additions. They're adding 2 Mexican players with Liga MX experience, starting with defender Juan Jose Parada, hope I'm pronouncing that right, and Mexican goalkeeper Raul Gudiño on a free transfer. The Parada's on loan from Tigres. Both players, what I thought was really interesting about that were that they're only guaranteed through 2022, and then there's club options for either extending a contract or extending a loan. I think that's really important. So, Felipe, can you tell us about the players? And 2, what is your insights into this cap spot and this roster spot that they were able to bring in 2 senior players, 2 senior international players?
Yeah, I mean, I agree that it looked difficult. I think we all knew that when the injuries were just piling up, it was the domino effect. Carlos Bocanegra, the front office, they were going to have to make moves in the summer. There's just no way they could continue throughout the season without helping Gonzalo Pineda with some players that can come in and play. And so, job done. They brought in 2 players. To your point, Tom, I think it is interesting that they're just signed through the end of the year. So I think, to me, it tells you 2 things about both players. And we can start with Raul Gudiño, the goalkeeper.
We'll start with whoever you want to start with, Felipe. You're driving here.
All right. Well, let's start with the goalkeeper, because I think that's been a highly scrutinized position in Atlanta. Trust me, it has not been good for Bobby Shuttleworth. He's come in an emergency situation. You give him that caveat, but he just hasn't performed. And when you have a back line in Atlanta that also has injuries and holes, and then a goalkeeper that's not performing, it was just, it was looking dire at times in some games. So Raul Gudiño, like I said, this is a big second chance for him. If you go to Chivas Twitter, if you go and you read the hardcore Chivas blogs, they're like, you can have him. He was a player that did not perform like the way he was supposed to. This is a goalkeeper, Raul Gudiño, that in doing my research, he was the first Mexican goalkeeper to play in the Champions League, the UEFA Champions League. In 2017-18, he played for Apoel from Cyprus, played in a group stage game against Borussia Dortmund. That was the sort of talent that he was. That was the projection that he had. And he just bounced around Europe. He went to FC Porto, couldn't play. Union Madera, had some time there, returned to Chivas, and just wasn't the guy. Couldn't be the guy in a very highly scrutinized club like Chivas. And so he's coming to MLS after not having any other options. From what I've read, Saudi Arabia was an option. Pumas kind of looked into him, but they opted for another goalkeeper. And so now he is this guy who is like, wow, he used to play in the Champions League, and now he's in MLS. So it's a big opportunity for him to just come back. He was in Tata Martino's goalkeeper camp in 2019. Like, I talked to Tata in December of this year when I was in Mexico City about the goalkeepers. He brought up Raul Gudiño as a guy that was in play early on in his tenure. But he's just since been passed over by several goalkeepers at the national team level, younger guys too. And so it's a big, big opportunity for him. And again, I think it's like a redo for Bocanegra as well. Shuttleworth didn't work out. He was a guy that was brought in over the winter. So that's going to be really interesting to see, because we also have an interesting goalkeeper battle with Rocco Rios Novo, who gets his first start. Wasn't really tested, but a fan favorite, has a really interesting profile. And Pineda is going to have some big decisions to make come July. So that's my take on Gudiño. It's going to be really interesting to see how that works out. And Purata, Juan Jose Purata, I think fits the profile of the sort of center back that Atlanta United wants. He's a ball-playing center back. He has size, which is something that I think without Miles Robinson, they've really been missing that physical presence on dead balls. Atlanta United has not been good on dead ball defending. Everyone knows it. They've admitted to this. But very much like like Gulinho, Purata was also in need of a new club. Piojo Miguel Herrera was not interested anymore in Purata. This is a defender that youth international experience, was highly sort of valued at the beginning at Tigres, but had some difficult performances, was once jeered off the pitch by the fans. I mean, that's where these guys are coming from.
Yeah.
So I think they see MLS as like, all right, give me this chance. I'm going to come here. It's not the same microscope. I can play. This team needs me. And so it's huge, huge opportunities for both players. And I think, Purata is probably the guy that we'll see first, come July when he can play, because the back line is obviously in deep need of just experience. And I think he offers that.
Let me close you out on this one. It seems to me from the outside, Cisneros, Gudiño, both Chivas guys, even Purata coming from Tigres, and now obviously Almada in this window. It feels like it's starting to be Gonzalo Pineda's decisions. It's starting to be his roster a little bit. What do you make of his changing role and sort of his development and fitting in Atlanta?
Well, I thought the same thing, David. I thought it was like, all right, these players are coming from Liga MX. Clearly, there's an influence here with Gonzalo Pineda. When they pick up the phone at any stage of the process, when the coach gets on the phone, and this is every coach in every league in the world. Once they hear his voice, he's a former Mexican international, that means something, right? But I asked Pineda last week about his influence on these signings and perhaps, more players coming from Mexico. And he stepped away from that one. He sort of danced around it saying like, hey, like I've been in MLS for almost a decade. Like I don't have a lot of those contacts. This is on the front office. They're bringing them their players. Yes, I have a role. And he did give credit to his two assistants, Diego De La Torre, another Mexican who played in Liga MX, won a title with Toluca. I played with him in the media game. The dude is freaking class.
Sick flex.
Yeah. But he's very good and just a nice guy. But he has, Pino was like Diego De La Torre has a lot of contacts, and they have another assistant, Eugenio Villazon, who's a veteran assistant, and around Liga MX, he's very, very well known. Has been a top assistant around the league at some of the biggest clubs in Mexico. He also has influence around the league. And so I think those are the pieces that are coming through. Obviously, the front office, the scouting department, they're looking at players that need new clubs. I mean, that's it. And like, why not Mexico? I think Atlanta United is also one of those clubs that, they did it first with the supposed South American pipeline. If you ask them, they were the first to do it, right? If you ask them. And the young money, the young DP, like right away, boom, 3. They brought 3 right away. It's like they will initiate that new trend in Mexico with Liga MX, MLS, continuing to get closer and closer in their relationship. Atlanta United is not going to waste any time in bringing in players that, perhaps can play in this league. So again, like any signing, you have to wait and see if these players can deliver. But it is interesting. I don't think it's like this new big thing that because Pineda is here, it's Mexican players, because he told me with the same question when I asked him, he's like, just because they're Mexican, it doesn't guarantee that they're going to play. And he was like, I told that to Jurgen Damm when he was here, and I told that to Cubo Torres. So nice, interesting dynamic.
They both believed him, Jurgen Damm, Cubo Torres. One plays in USL, the other one looking for a place to play. Felipe Cárdenas at The Athletic. All things Atlanta United. Felipe, I'm going to have you on soon to talk Cucho, I think, on MLS today, because I owe you one, and we like to hang out and talk. But I appreciate you coming on. I guess our power rankings voters were more impressed by the win over Inter Miami than Felipe himself was, as Atlanta sits 14th, plus moving up 6 spots from last week. Thank you so much, Felipe, for coming on to join us.
Anytime. Take care, guys. Take care, Tom.
Cheers, Felipe.
So now we move in as we approach our top 10 to New England at number 12. Previously number 14. They continue to move up both the standings and the power rankings. This one, a 2-1 win at home against Minnesota United in Matt Turner's send-off. Matt Turner did not play in this game. Kalen Carr already expressed how angry he was about that fact. I heard Weeby had a lot to say about it as well. Tom, have you recovered? Are you okay?
It's so frustrating. Just let him play, man. It's the Matt Turner farewell game. Why is Matt Turner not allowed to play? I'm surprised that Bruce wasn't just like, screw you, Arsenal. Like, what does Bruce care? You already agreed the deal. As long as he doesn't get hurt, he'll pass the medical. I'm honestly surprised.
Interesting. I thought afterwards when Turner basically was like, my wife's already in London. She's 9 months pregnant. I'm coming off US stuff. My head's all over the place. I thought at that point it was like, it didn't feel like anyone really needed him to start. And let's be clear, Petrovic has been really good in filling in for him. And I think for Bruce and those involved and maybe even the players for New England, why shake his confidence? Let's all sort of move on positively into the future. And it seemed to have worked out.
Yeah, I think that's fair enough. And as you said, moving on into the future with Petrovic, he's been really solid. He's looking like a really strong kind of replacement for Matt Turner. You're never going to get the same value for someone who's the best goalie in the league, who is consistently on a team-friendly deal. And moving forward with Adam Buksa gone, they're going to need a new DP. So it's going to be another starter. I would hope that they aim for a young DP so they could add 2 more U22 initiative slots. I just think that that's the best way to maximize the dollars on your cap, and particularly with how well Dylan Barrero has been. I'd love to see them add another 1 or 2 or see what else they can do to kind of, really manipulate the top of this roster. And again, we're only half a year after they set a new record, but for points in their Sports Show winning game season last year. But this team is markedly different than they were a year ago.
They feel like they found their feet. It feels like now, as they finally have moved on, you mentioned Barrero, his 1v1 ability, his game-breaking ability has sort of added some of what they lost with Tejan, and it feels like now players are in the roles that they're most comfortable with, and the fullbacks can be aggressive, but don't have to be too aggressive. They don't constantly have to be involved in the attack. It feels like now, without Buksa, unfortunate for them, it feels like Gustavo Bo is starting to find the game in places that he likes it, and he can float along that front line and be uber dangerous. And Carlos Heel, I think he might be the only one who has never taken a step back and continues to be dangerous. Sebastian Lletget feels to be sort of settling in as well. So a lot of excitement for the New England Revolution. I was worried because I questioned how long it takes signings to settle. Both these guys have hit the ground running. It makes me believe that they could bring in a DP and have them be effective for a potential MLS Cup run this year.
Yeah, and I think that's fair too. Like, you look at, again, Barrero's a 20-year-old from the Brazilian league. Like, these guys
really played in Brazil either.
Yeah, these guys are supposed to take much longer to settle, and like there is a rightfully so a grace period in judging these guys, and he's looked really electric kind of right off the bat. So that's been super encouraging. I think my question for you, though, in terms of macro views of this team, they looked a lot better when Josie came off the field and Bo was alone up top. Can this team play with Josie and Bo together, or I guess even more to the point, another forward if they do sign a DP center forward? Like two.
I don't know that Josie and Gustavo Bo work best together. I think over the course of the last week or two, that hasn't seemed to be evident. I do believe that Bo could play with another forward because we saw him do it with Adam Buksa, and they were successful as a team. He continued to be successful as an individual as well. It doesn't feel like the Josie move is going to work. And it almost feels like everyone's accepted that pretty quickly. He has not been the starter.
3-year contract, dude. It's a 3-year contract. That is awful news.
But he's already not the starter when Adam Buksa left, right? Like, he's almost having to fight his way into the team when it felt like it was going to be his spot to lose. And so, I don't know how they get out of this. They can call TFC and ask them what you normally do in a situation like that. And they'd say, find a team like New England to spend the money for you to help you out a little bit and be ready to bite. But again, team continues to be successful. So in my mind, what does it matter? Right? This is the whole, what are you willing to do for a championship? Chiellini, that's not a long-term contract, right? If they win MLS Cup and Chiellini's the worst player in MLS next year, it was a good signing. And Josie can be the same for them this year. And maybe in the playoffs where he has elevated his game and he has been elite, that's a time when he could settle in. But it feels like the rest of the team coming together. And you look at how quick Gustavo Bo hit. It didn't take Adam Buksa that long. Matt Polster came into the team really quickly. They've done a great job of getting players into the team successfully, and hopefully they can continue that on. That moves us into our top 10 as New England sits number 12 right now, continuing to move up the standings in the Eastern Conference. They are now in 6th. They are back in the playoff spot after their CCL short run, I guess you could say, but their CCL run as well. So let's move into the top 10, and we start at number 7 for my guy JMI, John Tolkien, and Tom Bogart, down 2 spots from number 5 after a 2-0 win. The New York Red Bulls, 2 wins in their last 3 MLS games. They now sit second in the Eastern Conference, right behind NYCFC, although on more games played. And they did so without Patrick Klimala or Ashley Fletcher in the lineup this weekend, playing with the false 9 against Toronto FC. And Tom, for starters, they just dominate Toronto FC. They own this matchup. But in general, it does feel like, okay, the Charlotte game was a step back, but they did it without Aaron Long, without Christian Casares, Klimala as well. Now it feels like at their best, they can compete with anyone.
Yeah, and this is really encouraging from this team. And look, anytime that you can get a 5'7" player unmarked for a free header on a corner kick from 6 yards out, that's always a good. They should do that every corner. I think Toronto might need to work on that. Yeah, I think the most important part is, as you said, they've done this kind of without being full strength. Like Luquinhas has been legitimately really, really good. Like I was kind of writing at the beginning of the year that, kind of when they were signing Luquinhas, that, yeah, this team is pretty solid. This team, their baseline is always going to be strong given their tactics, given, some of the what they've proven, even with a young group over all of these years and as everything evolves. But to go from solid playoff team and maybe difficult to eliminate, but, still not one of the favorites, to make that jump into the next tier, they needed to have a best 11 caliber player. And that either needed to be Luquinhas or if Patrick Klimala was going to take a step forward. It had to be one of those two to kind of bring this team up a tier. Look, Luquinhas has been that so far, just straight up has been. He's been really, really good. He's been not just performing well, but he's been, cashing that in with goals and assists. So I think that I need to rethink, I think, how I was looking at this team and how we were all looking at this team. If Luquinhas is a best 11 caliber player, this team is one of the best teams in the East.
Yeah, I agree with you. I still have hope with Klimala. I also think that even if you have one player on the verge of that level, if everyone else fits in the right spot, then that elevates people individually, right? Frankie Amaya being in this spot, Lewis Morgan being in the spot he's in, Drew Yearwood. I think all of them, because they fit so well in the style and formation, I think that elevates them. And I would also say Aaron Long is in that conversation. Cornell is in that conversation as well. So they have elite parts of the team that they lean on, and it was huge to see Aaron Long back in the squad. Our producer Phil put Fabio in our rundown. We've seen the rumors now that he's available.
I did.
Oh, you did?
And no rumors. I'm upset at that. It was a report from me.
Tom, he's a non-goal scoring creative number 9, and Patrick Klimala is a non-goal scoring creative number 9. Why is Fabio the answer then?
I'm just saying he's available. And from what I've heard in terms of details, it's a free loan and a really reasonable purchase option. He wouldn't have to be a DP is what I'm telling you. So I don't know. I was a big fan of Fabio last year. I was really, really shocked that the Red Bulls didn't pick up his purchase option. I don't know the story there because he ended up at Atletico Mineiro. I don't know if he and his camp were pushing for that or whatever it was. I thought for sure they were going to trigger that purchase option. But things have not gone well for him at Atletico Mineiro. He has been kind of offered up to numerous MLS clubs. That's something that he'd be open to. He's somebody who clearly has proved himself in the league as a solid player. Maybe you want somebody more goal dangerous, but I think you could do a lot worse than Fabio.
I think last year to start the year, he was good. And once Klimala got there, it felt like they were redundant on each other. And that's sort of, you've already spent the money on Klimala, but I would never say in MLS, I would always say, sorry, in MLS, if you can get quality on a quality contract, you figure it out later. You trade pieces, people come and get it from you. If he is available for a reasonable deal and you already know what he can do in this league, I would agree with you that it makes sense to bring him in. And then you figure out the next steps after this season or maybe after a year or so. So that's the Red Bulls. Of course, huge Open Cup game for them against NYC coming up midweek. Philadelphia, number 5 on this list, dropping 2 spots from number 3. We talked about it with Pat, a 1-1 draw against FC Cincinnati. 4th team in MLS history to draw 7 times in an 8-match span. Not a lot of excitement there for them. Jim Curtin, after the game, he said this, quote, "It's not a lack of effort. We're missing that one player, that one piece to break down an opponent." Tom, is there any chance that one piece could be coming in?
I mean, there's always a chance, but No, I don't think so. They went out and signed 2 DP center forwards this offseason. Last year, they got Daniel Gazdag, who could be he's above the TAM. He could be qualified as a DP. You have these homegrown players. If you make another signing, you're blocking your investments, whether it is the 2 DP forwards, whether it's Gazdag, or whether it's the homegrowns. I was talking to people in Philly kind of about that quote because I was like, maybe I'm just misreading, or maybe I'm looking too much at just the regular plan. And they were like, not really. I think that was just Jim talking about, trying to spark something in the guys that he has, / like point out, hey, Mikel Ura still is a 90 minutes fit. Sergio Santos has been out, all these kind of caveats. And I think it was more about an internal thing rather than an external addition.
Mikel Ura doesn't feel at the level. He doesn't feel like he's ready, to compete at a DP level for them. He also doesn't feel like anything is different from what he brings to what Carranza brings and Sergio Santos. And that's my worry coming out of this game. Is every moment that Cincinnati sat in, none of them had ideas of how to break them down. And then when they won the ball, all 3 of those players, they want the field stretched and they want to go over the top. And that's sort of been the conversation, is Ura will be that next step above what Santos and Shabilko and Carranza brought to this team. And maybe once he's on form, he's like Karol Swardowski, where he's so efficient in what he does that it doesn't matter the style, but we just have to see that player.
Yeah, and I think that is the worry. I've just been saying all offseason because I trust this team's talent evaluation probably as much, if not more, than anybody else in the league. So I just kept on thinking if Ura has to be worth it, Ura has to be worth it. There was some other smart MLS teams that I know of that at least were interested in him. So I do think he's going to come good. And we talk about all the caveats, what we're saying with New England. I think it's a bonus if these players hit the ground running. Granted, he's a more veteran player, so he has less of a runway, you think, in terms of goodwill. But I don't know. I'd give it a couple more months before I decide whether or not he's really not going to be that guy. And then in terms of transfers, just a non sequitur to add, I've heard nothing new on Kai Wagner. There are a ton of teams interested in him. I still think it's more likely than not that he gets sold this summer. He almost got sold in the winter. Like Fulham and Brentford were in for him. Obviously, German teams. He is German and was in the German third tier before he came to Philly. German teams are interested. But as of right now, for what it's been described to me, is it's all still just interest and nothing like serious talks yet.
And it feels like the play of Nathan Harriel has kind of opened that ability up a little bit more. He can play left. He can play right.
True.
They still have Mbaizo. They still have Matt Real. They still have options if they were to lose Kai Wagner. So I still think reason to be excited. If you're a Philly fan, you are in a conversation different from what your reality has been almost your entire time in MLS. Even if now, opposite of what we said with Inter Miami, there's frustration. That's because the expectations are really high. Let's keep rolling into our top 5. And that means we're talking RSL, baby. Number 4, up 4 spots from last week at number 8. A 2-0 win over San Jose. Jefferson Savarino, his first MLS regular season goal in 994 days. That goes back to September of 2019. Obviously, he left, went to Brazil, and now he has come back. And Tom, it just feels like a club that's going in the right direction from all different angles, whether it's on the field, in the front office, in the crowd, in the market, the youth levels. It just feels like RSL is just moving in one direction.
Yeah, they've been one of my favorite stories, I think, this year. I wrote something to the effect of them being overlooked by everybody, and I thought that I implied myself as well because again, I was victim of it as well. But they've earned this. It's wild. It doesn't make any sense to me, and I mean that in a polite and like good way. Like it doesn't. All these excuses. No Damir Krylak. Your DP didn't come in until the last days of the primary transfer window, so they had already played 10 games or whatever it was. Anderson Julio didn't come in until the last week of the transfer window, so he wasn't ready to go for a couple weeks. Essentially, like they've been without players. David Ochoa was one of the fun stories last year, and everybody thought he was this rising talent. He hasn't played at all, whether it was injuries and now unavailability or whatever it is. Nothing has stopped this team from picking up points. It's so admirable. Like Doyle wrote it best. I'm just going to steal from him. He made a joke about them having the best expected dog rating because they got that dog in them. That's my only explanation for this team. It's incredible. What Pablo Mastroeni is doing is really, really great. The players are stepping up. Like you look at this team and it feels like they have a talent deficiency in a lot of spots against whoever they're playing. And it doesn't matter. They're a really great collective. They're better than the sum of its parts. And again, I wish I had a better explanation. I wish I had something more analytical. I wish I could describe this is what they're doing that's different than other teams. But man, like I'm just enjoying the ride for them there. And when you look forward to this summer, they have one DP spot that they can absolutely add. If they wanted to, they could add two. They could buy down Damir Kreilach as well. So I don't know. As you said, it's really positive times around this team. And again, it's been a long time coming given the ownership situation until this offseason. So I don't know. It's one of the best stories in the league right now.
You mentioned the injuries. I think they had one game they suited up with 14 players out injured, and they were still able to get a win, 6-0-1 at home. That's been a huge part of what they've done well, but they've gotten a bunch of draws on the road as well to keep them their head above water. And now they sit in second in the Western Conference, which is really impressive for them. What I love most about what I'm seeing is that they have this will, this culture, next man up, and then that gets filled in through those academy players that they've invested a ton in. And what I like about what they've done is a lot of these players are 22, 23, 24. These players have gone to college. They came out of the RSL Academy. They get signed as homegrowns, and then they're given an opportunity to be that next player up and be effective. This is a club that I think is more robust than we realized because of those players, where they were running on a shoestring budget for so long, but it meant the Tate Schmitz of the world, the Andrew Brodys, they all got playing experience. And now you fill in Jefferson Savarino, and we hope you fill in maybe a couple more DPs and a Bobby Wood and a Cordova. And those pieces are able to do enough to help get that team over the line week in and week out. And it's been really impressive to watch. It has been a lot of fun. So congrats to RSL for moving up. And let's close out with the number one team in the power rankings. They moved up one spot, even though they went on the road and got a draw. But I guess it was a pretty good result in Seattle, previously number two. For LAFC. And listen, it's LAFC. We're going to talk about one thing mainly. Do you want me to do other stuff first, Tom, or can I just jump us straight in?
You're the driver here, man.
What is going to happen with Carlos Vela? What is going on? I think I'm almost surprised how well he's handled it. Coming off the bench in this game. It was his 100th appearance. They gave him the jersey after. He's smiling in the picture. He wore the captain's armband when he came off the bench. He seems pretty committed, but he's got 9 days on his contract, 2 more games. What is going on?
Yeah, I mean, from me asking around about this, a lot of it is I've gotten Carlos being Carlos ? That's various sources have been saying, Doug McIntyre first broke the news that confirmed it about a month ago now, that they had reached a verbal agreement. And then I keep on checking in. Hey, has it been signed? No, it's not been signed. Oh, it's probably going to be signed next week. This was kind of the first week of the international break. So when they were off, and I checked in then, it's like, no, he hasn't signed it yet. And I was like, okay, well, there's 2 weeks left in his contract. Should I be worrying or should I start asking around? No, it's nothing I'd worry about. And this was last week. So I'm saying I'm worried. It's 9 days. If verbal agreement or not, if he hasn't signed the contract still, which to be fair, I haven't talked to anybody about it today. And then he's coming out in the media after the game, giving quotes about, this is business or whatever it is. I don't know, man. This could be Carlos being Carlos. I don't think that there was any coincidence that after they had reached a verbal agreement and then the same day that the MLSPA put out the salaries, that he kind of had a quote about his future or whatever kind of come out. So I don't think that was coincidental, but I don't know, man. From the people that I've talked to at LAFC said not to worry, again, about a week ago, but I don't know. I think I'm officially worried.
So it's on him, though, you're saying, is the team, they want him back. They're willing, it seems like, to give an offer somewhere in the stratosphere of what he wants to come back.
They agreed to terms. The contract was ready to go. I don't know if somebody's going back on their agreement or not. So I don't know every little detail, or I don't know if this is just him again, Carlos being Carlos. Maybe he signs it today or tomorrow, whatever it is. I don't know. But again, they had an agreement. They had everything ready to go. This reminds me that I need to check in on this yet again. So, maybe I'll have more later, but again, as of last week, I was told, don't worry. So
I respect Carlos Vela's commitment to the content and commitment to the headlines. We appreciate everything he has done for us. You have been a great warrior. Thank you, Carlos Vela. We hope to see him continue on. He gave some quotes at the end of this game about Chiellini. He's talking about wanting to play with Chiellini and what he can bring to the team when he arrives. So he's talking as if he is a part of this group going forward. And it just wouldn't make sense to sign Chiellini as a win now move and not close things down and keep Carlos Vela there. It gives you your best chance to win this year. I saw a rumor connecting Yarmolenko. Should I even think about that?
No.
Okay.
No.
It would be a good signing. I think it would be a good move.
Trust me, again, he's been kind of he's been offered to clubs in the league. I'm surprised that nothing has been reached. Like, he seems like somebody who would make sense for a lot of teams, but maybe there's still time.
And I know I saw some of the other connections were in Saudi Arabia, so maybe the numbers don't make sense in the end. And that takes us to the close of our show. So congratulations to LAFC for being in first place. Thank you to everyone here for listening. Thank you to Pat Brennan and Felipe Cárdenas for joining us. Thank you to Phil Ivanko for putting this all together. And Tom, I think we had some fun overall. If you're watching, you see the top 10 on your screen. Is there anything big that stands out to you before we go?
When I was filling out my list today, it was difficult after the LAFC, NYCFC, Seattle, Salt Lake range to pick, like, all right, Philly shouldn't be still in fifth after, another draw. And then it was like, but like, can Dallas be fifth because of their loss? So there was a lot of, after the top four, it wasn't a banner weekend for the favorites. How
do the Red Bulls move down after winning?
I have no idea.
One that I don't understand. Congratulations to Austin, though. A huge win, down a man for almost over 45 minutes, and getting a win up in Montreal, who have now fallen out of the top 10. LA Galaxy with their 1-1 draw hanging right at 10th place. Can they sort of figure it out, though, going forward? So that's all for us here on the Power Rankings Show. We appreciate you all for listening. If you're listening live, you can go to MLSsoccer.com to get the full Power Rankings as well as coverage of everything in Major League Soccer. And again, thank you to our guests for joining us. So for myself, for Tom Bogart, for Phil Ivanko, have a great day, everyone.